Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this wonderful Green Women's Declaration webinar. You are very welcome. So thank you for being here. This evening, we are here talking to Alison Teal, and the title of our webinar is Teal, a more sophisticated shade of green. But before we start, as we so often do, I'd just like to give a little disclaimer. Tonight, as on any other night at a Green Women's Declaration, it is very likely that you will hear things that you do not agree with, and indeed we hope that you do. Green Women's Declaration exists to promote healthy and robust debate. It's a debate around important issues of fairness, dignity and safety for women and girls. And we have a campaign, as you I'm sure know, our campaign is to change Green Party policy in these issues and areas, as well as shine a light on the injustices of the current factional regime that has a stranglehold over the Green Party national bodies at the moment. So part of the reason that we're hosting these webinars is to foster a culture of debate and make space for respectful and well-argued disagreement. So it's not just for the sake of it that we're doing that, but it's because we believe that hearing different and sometimes disagreeable perspectives is the best way to build a sustainable future for everyone. Because we can draw on those differences and find a way forward together, and we can't do that if we don't hear all different voices. Having said that, we do not accept hectoring and abusive or offensive language in the chat or any hostile sloganeering or offensive imagery. So we will be keeping an eye out for that, and we'll be removing anybody who can't take a civilised approach to this evening's proceedings. Would also like to say that while the executive at Green Women's Declaration fully and unreservedly endorses Alison's candidacy and campaign, your presence here is not taken as a tacit endorsement of Alison's campaign. We know that it is against the rules to support non-green candidates, and there are party members here who will be attending out of curiosity and should not be sanctioned for doing so. I think then I just want to introduce myself. My name is Zoe Hatch. I am your host for this evening, and I'd like to take a moment then to introduce you to our very special guest tonight, Alison Teal. Alison came and she's a founding signatory of the Green Women's Declaration, and she first came to speak to us in our webinar, The Process is the Punishment, which was back in December 2023. Alison, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you not see me?
Yeah, I can, but I think I've just done something that maybe, there we go. Hi, Alison. That's brilliant. It's really good to have you here tonight. Thank you so much for making time to come and see us. Now, I say that because I think you're incredibly busy at the moment because you're standing as an independent candidate, and you are a more sophisticated shade of green, although a true green at heart, and you're standing in the constituency of Sheffield Central. So, what's happened then? You know, what's happened to bring you to that decision and that stage? Can you just give us a little overview of the situation that you found yourself in?
Certainly, yeah. So I was selected as the Green Party candidate for Sheffield Central in September 2022, so a very long time ago. And I was looking forward to putting on a good campaign. And then in October of that year, I found myself being suspended on a no-fault suspension. And that's just dragged on and on and on. And so here we are 20 months later. And the general election was called. I had called upon people in the party to try and expedite what had been happening because, the complaint had been dragging on forever, the suspension was. And I did get really good support, but those people were unable to move the Green Party Regional Council to take action, and therefore it was decided that they could go ahead and do an emergency reselection for the position of PPC. And they just went ahead and did that without any deselection process. And so I think that was, well, it's according to our constitution and the processes and procedures outlined, that should have happened first. And so it pushed me into a situation where I made the choice to resign from the party and stand as an independent.
Wow. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? And I have followed it, and I'm sure that many people here. It's great to see so many of you here, especially on a sunny Friday evening. We only announced this webinar on Tuesday, although we planned it a little bit longer than that. But it's phenomenal to see so many of you here. So you're all very welcome. Thank you for being here. But that's been it's been quite a journey. I followed it very closely, and have been outraged all along the way by the way that you've been treated by the party. But there might be some people here who are curious and don't know the story as well as I do, and actually don't know a little bit about your history. So can we go way back when, Alison, and hear a little bit more about you? What prompted you to get involved in the Green Party, and when did you join?
Okay, so my interest in green politics started when I was living. So I'm originally born in the UK, in a place called Royston near Barnsley, so not far from Sheffield. And I moved to Australia when I was 24, and I lived there for 24 years. And while I was there, I did some research in the early 90s about people's response to climate change back then. And it was really interesting. I ran focus groups and I found that people were really keen for the government to take action. They were already doing things like lots of recycling. They were recycling their grey water. They were looking at insulation and all these sorts of things that we're still doing now. And so I think that there's been energy amongst the population in general to want to take action way before governments have. And now we found ourselves in a situation decades later where things aren't really particularly changed at all. And so that was really interesting. So I felt confident that the green position and the need to recognise the climate and nature crisis that was facing us was something that people wanted to know more about, and I certainly wanted to know more about. But during that time, I had children, and so I just didn't have the capacity. I was working, had children, didn't have the capacity to be particularly involved in politics. So when I moved back to the UK, I moved to Sheffield in February 2014. One of the first things I did was join the Green Party. And I got swept into the local elections right away. So I joined in April, and a wonderful woman called Emma came over to my house and said, "Oh, I see you joined the local Green Party. I'm standing in Sheffield Central ward, Sheffield City ward, sorry. And yeah, would you like to help me with leafleting and maybe you could do a bit of canvassing?" So I got involved then, and Anna's a super dynamic campaigner. And yeah, she just swept me up and off we went. And yeah, I just become very much involved in the party then. And it was lovely because I was new to the city, didn't know many people. And so it was a way for me to get to know lots of people, created a network. And yeah, I really had a great time. It was good.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Really beautiful insight into your journey. And yeah, and you've been since the 90s, you've been working really around this. I think having children as well really it brings it into sharp focus in a really different way as well, doesn't it? Really brings it alive for you when you start to think about their future as well as our own. So moving forward, then you got involved in the Green Party. Fantastic. And just tell us a little bit about what it is that you do when you're not a Green campaigner.
Oh, okay. So I'm a psychologist and therapist and family therapist, and so yeah, that's my profession.
Well, so you got a little bit more drawn into Green Party politics, I think. You weren't just an ordinary member, Alison. So what happened there?
So I joined the Green Party and I helped with that local election, but then things started to happen in Sheffield regarding the tree felling programme that came into being. So the council signed a contract in 2012 with a multinational called Ferrovial, and the subsidiary here was called Amy. And Amy had started felling trees, healthy street trees, which was really shocking. But I didn't find out, it didn't come to an area near me until 2015. So in June 2015, I started to get involved in opposing the tree felling. And that was a campaign that quickly grew amongst residents in Nether Edge, where I live. And one of the reasons people come to live here is because it's very beautiful. There's lots of tree-lined streets. It's just absolutely gorgeous, and it's a really main feature of this area. So the prospect of losing so many trees was really disturbing, and so I got very much involved in that campaign, and didn't attend. I did attend the monthly meetings for the Green Party, but that was about it in terms of my commitment. But then in later that year, I think September or October 2014, no, 15, the chair of the party, a fabulous woman called Helen Milner, rang up just before nominations closed to stand as a councillor and said, Alison, you think that women's representation is really important and you're not standing. And do you realise that there are no female candidates in our target wards? And I was like, no. And she said, what are you going to do about it?
Oh.
So it's like, oh, gosh. And I did
put your money where your mouth is when somebody comes knocking on the door and ask those kind of questions, don't you?
Yeah. It was like, oh my word. And so it's kind of like, oh, why me? But anyway, so under a little bit of pressure, I threw my hat in the ring, and subsequently ended up being selected, and then actually won in May 2016, the local elections, and I won by 4 votes.
Wow.
And the Labour candidate wasn't terribly happy and asked for a recount, and I ended up winning by 8 votes.
Oh, how very satisfying for them, but that's how it goes sometimes. Yeah.
So I was a councillor then, but the tree campaign was rumbling on, and I was devoting a considerable amount of time to it, like many other people as well. And it was an amazing experience, a horrific experience, because I always thought that the council and the police were there to protect us and look after us and keep us safe, but they ended up becoming the people that were most menacing and did terrible things to us. They used violence, and the police turned a blind eye. There were security guards employed by the council and Amy to come and try and prevent us from protecting trees. They started to enclose trees with big metal barriers, and what happened was that the community responded with tremendous creativity, and the ways we found to still protect trees, despite security guards and large metal fences and all this, was just extraordinary. And there's a film about it now. It's called The Felling, if anyone's interested, wants to get a flavour of what it's about. It's a really great film. And yeah, what else happened? The council took out an injunction that was specifically against me and 8 other people, plus persons unknown. And
how did that feel? What was the injunction? I mean,
amazing. So we all had to go to the High Court, and we basically it was decided. The judge granted the council the injunction, and I've got this funny map. And it's basically the border of Sheffield, and it's basically anywhere in this border you're not allowed to stand under trees. It was like,
stand under trees?
You must not stand under trees. Well, where work is being done, obviously.
Wow.
And so it's all really quite surreal, and
it's incredible.
Had to imagine the lengths that a company would go to, and that the council would also be united with in standing against citizens in such an awful way. And subsequently, I was accused of breaching the injunction on 2 occasions, so I ended up in the High Court again, and I was threatened with committal, which at first I wasn't sure what's committal, and then I found out that it meant that they could send me to prison, which was just wildly unreasonable considering what it is we were actually doing.
Was that scary?
It was really scary, yeah. But I never believed it could happen, because it was just such a mad thing. It was just such an unreasonable thing. But of course, subsequently, we've seen, many protesters being sent to actual prison, haven't we, over the past few years? So, the changes in the law, we were lucky it happened before those changes took place. But now, it's no longer a crazy idea, it's a reality. And so, this is incredibly disturbing.
Yeah, I hear that.
Happened. I was arrested and kept in a cell for over 8 hours. It was a high security cell with a door like that fat. So it was like being in a bank vault or something.
Yeah.
It's just like they really did go to extreme ends to really frighten us and try to put us off. But it had the opposite effect.
Can I just delve into a little bit more about this? You were trying to save the trees, but I seem to remember reading about the fact that you were also uncovering other areas of kind of corrupt practices within the council. Do you think that that was why they went to such lengths to to intimidate you? There's no other way to put it, is there?
It wasn't so much corrupt practices, but I mean, there was a lot of collusion between the council and the police and things like that. They did tell lies. I got thrown out of the council chamber. I got the mayor expelled me from the council chamber for accusing one of the Labour councillors, cabinet members, for misleading the public, and so that was amazing. So all the opposition walked out too in protest, which was really something. So partly emptied the council chamber, and that created a big kerfuffle. You know, it's just basically I have had this a decade of learning that people don't like the truth being spoken out loud. And so when you expose that people are deceiving the public, they start to behave in ways that are very unedifying, and it gets really scary, and you can be threatened with all sorts of things. And there are real parallels between what happens in the Green Party subsequently and what happened in my trees protecting career. Yeah.
Let's talk about that in a minute, but let's first of all, stay with this time period, because at that time the Green Party had a track record of speaking truth to power in a way that that meant that we saw people like Caroline Lucas being arrested in the fracking movement, and you were doing sort of similar things with the trees. That's how I first came to hear about you, and it's great now that I can call you a friend, but we didn't know each other historically. And tell me, how were you received within the Green Party? Because I do remember hearing about you and seeing you actually, I think, in the national press at the time as well. So how were you received?
Yeah, it generated terrific press for the Green Party. Gave them a lot of kudos, and and I was given the Impressive Councillor Achievement Award at the Autumn Conference in Harrogate in 2017. And it was funny. Jenny was saying how excited she was, and she was hoping I'd get sent to prison.
Like Jenny Jones?
Yes.
Oh, brilliant.
Like, well, that makes for a really interesting press, but I'm not sure that I would really enjoy that.
Yeah, there's a human element to that as well, isn't there? Yeah.
No, I mean, Jenny's been wonderful, and I have tremendous respect and time for Jenny. But that particular, her enthusiasm for that, I wasn't quite so sure about.
No, I can see where she was coming from, though, and I'm sure it's slightly tongue-in-cheek. Jenny, of course, is a signatory of the Green Women's Declaration and a friend to our movement and our organisation. Okay, so that that it doesn't get any clearer than that, does it? That you were well endorsed by the party, and you were well respected and well thought of, and it's fair to say that was true in the local party as well.
Oh, yeah, very much so. Yeah, I was very active, very engaged, and I was a councillor for 6 years, and during that time, we entered an alliance, a cooperative cabinet for the last year of my tenure, where I was actually a cabinet member.
Right.
And in order to strike that deal, I managed to negotiate the Lowcock inquiry into the trees campaign. So that was really important, because it enabled a lot of those deceptive things that had been going on to be more closely examined.
And that's been a legacy, really, hasn't it? Because that came out after you stopped being a councillor, but that's still now very much on record. And you not only just held the Sheffield City Council to account, but also it's a really brilliant flag for other activists to know what route to take and how to resist these kind of actions going forward, and to sort of send a signal to corrupt, I'm still going to use the word corrupt, and I recognise you don't want to, practices within other councils up and down the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's just was such a thrill to be part of a campaign that was successful, because I know the vast majority aren't. And
Mm.
but it was, it was a very multi-pronged, there are many, many different people doing different things. Some people really focused on the legal aspects. Some people were doing their best to interrogate what we could find of the PFI contract. And then of course people like me were more active on the streets. And
But taking I sense, Alison, you might be too modest to say this, but I have spoken to other people in the local party and people that support you, and it seems that you fulfil very much and embody the definition of a female leader who is prepared to roll her sleeves up, get organised, but you also have a brilliant ability to bring people together, and that's the kind of leadership that we need going forward. It feels to me that's something that we need in our world more of, and I can see you're already being incredibly fair even to the people that were persecuting you at that time. So then, what, if I dare say or dare ask, what went wrong? What happened? Because you were selected as the proper candidate for the upcoming election. You were a parliamentary candidate, I think, in 2019 as well for
I
Sheffield
was,
Central.
yes.
So tell us a little bit about that, and tell us, what went wrong.
Yeah, the campaign in 2019 went without a hitch, no problems at all. Despite the fact that I've been tweeting my concerns about self-ID, which the party was aspiring to bring into policy. I've been talking about that since 2017. I had a meeting with Michelle Moore and Andy Healy early on, and they both gave me lots of information about the impact of potential impact of transitioning on children. And I was, it was a rude awakening for me. I had no idea what had been going on so early. And so that really compelled me to have to start speaking about it publicly. So I certainly didn't keep it a secret. But that didn't prevent the party from, no one prevented me from standing in 2019. It wasn't an issue back then, but obviously it's grown in greater and greater significance within the party as more and more activists who've been concerned about gender identity ideology have joined up or learned more about it. And so by the time we got to September 2022, there is I think it's pretty small number of people within the local party felt very disturbed about my views because I wouldn't agree with the slogan "trans women are women" and trans men are men, and therefore they felt that my views were beyond the pale and that I didn't ought to be a candidate for Parliament. And so they mobilised. There's evidence on social media that it was an organised campaign against me. And it wasn't just people in Sheffield, there were people across the country also involved, mostly young Greens and people in the LGBTQIA plus group that were really, really unhappy about me.
How did that campaign manifest? There was a particular motif, wasn't there, that was used and replicated across the internet?
Yeah. So it was basically 5 of the Sheffield councillors, which I'll still remain shocked about, and a candidate put up a trans flag. No, it was a rainbow flag, I think, and basically saying that I will not campaign for a trans vote, basically in shorthand. It didn't name me, but immediately everybody knew who it was, I think. And
There was an article in Bright Green, wasn't there?
yeah, a day or two
Almost
after.
immediately afterwards, and I don't think your candidacy had been announced until.
No, it was very unfortunate because, okay, so just wind back a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. No, there was no press release done about my candidacy. And so I found out on the Monday, and on Wednesday, candidates had been asked to make sure that their diaries were clear for the Wednesday morning following the selection votes. And so I contacted the campaign organizer and said, "Oh, what's happening? Is Wednesday going ahead?" And she told me that no, Natalie Bennett, who was going to be at the press launch, had declined to attend because I had been selected.
That's
which
Baroness Natalie Bennett, who is one of the two
yes,
Green peers in the House of Lords, for anybody who doesn't know.
yeah.
So
Who,
somebody that you
who,
would think would take, you hope, a grown-up approach to
well,
this kind of
so
situation.
Natalie asked me to stand for the 2019 election.
Right,
So I knew that she approved of me and supported me.
right.
She declines. She's her response to me saying that is something like, "I remember it differently" or something like that. But I remember it very clearly, and exactly where I was when she asked me, because it was a very flattering, quite an impactful thing for her to want. Because I was a tremendous admirer of hers,
Yeah.
and so that she would ask me to stand, I won't forget that.
It's the kind of thing you would remember, isn't it?
it
Yeah,
really is.
absolutely.
To
Yeah,
sort of be anointed by she was the candidate in 2017 was a pretty big deal for me.
yeah,
To have that endorsement and support was just amazing. And so when she refused, a few years later to be at the press launch, I was really hurt by that.
yeah.
I'd gotten to know her quite well. I'd seen her socially a few times. She was living in Sheffield at the time. This was not what I expected. We'd even discussed the issues about how self ID could impact on women, women's spaces, etc. We talked about that very civilly.
Mm.
Pizza
So
and
you
wine.
recognise that perhaps you had a slightly different perspective or different
Yeah,
perspectives, but you were able to hold a respectful discourse
yeah,
about it, which
yeah,
is,
we did.
I think, what you and I have both come to believe as members of the Green Party was exactly what it was all about.
Yeah, 2018-19, I would have spoke to Natalie, but with one particular conversation, we went into some depth, and she didn't absolutely oppose what I was saying, or say, oh, she didn't advise me that, oh, Alison, that's really not something that you ought to
Mm.
speak out about, or, nothing like that. She just kind of nodded and said, oh, well, I think it's different, but anyway.
Well, look, we know that some of the leadership have had pressure on them for withdrawing the party statement about Cass. So we know that there are questions around, who runs the party and why, and how are some of our leadership team being pressured into taking a particularly ideological stance around these certain issues. But let's go back to, the detail, perhaps a little bit more detail about somebody in the chat has asked me, and it's not a silly question at all, but what is a no-fault suspension? I think to a certain extent, every Green Party member who's been sanctioned by the so-called no-fault suspension would like to know what that is as well, because it's not well documented or defined within Green Party kind of literature. But Alison, what happened to you?
Yeah, so the impact of a no-fault suspension on me was that I was told that I could no longer attend meetings, I could have no contact with Green Party members, I would no longer receive Green Party emails, and my sort of suspended status would remain until Green Party Regional Council saw fit to deal with it. And so
Shall we just say that to people who don't know, the idea of, Darren Johnson's just put in the chat, he now knows what a no-fault suspension is. It's really nice to have you here, Darren. So the idea was that if there was an emergency scenario, there would be a small group of people within the party,
ideally, that's
members
what.
of our regional council and our disciplinary committee, who could quickly meet and say, okay, this is a very urgent situation.
Yeah.
We're not going to make a call on whether this person is guilty or not, but so there may be no fault, but we are going to suspend them from the party and we're going to have a quick investigation to see. It would be perhaps for things like fraud or serious misconduct or bringing the party into disrepute. I don't know, use your imagination, but it's for very serious offences. It might be appropriate for something that's happened like, the gambling that's happened in the Conservative Party recently. And then instead, Alison, you had been selected as a candidate. Essentially, that's as far as I can understand it, the offence you're guilty of. My
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah.
A woman who's good at campaigning and good at bringing the citizens of Sheffield together under a green umbrella, and you were put on a no-fault suspension.
Yeah, and I still don't understand a lot of the paperwork, and I wasn't told why I'd received a suspension at that time. In fact, it took 8 months before I heard anything about what I'd actually supposedly done. So no fault
8
suspensions.
months.
8 months.
My
Yeah,
goodness.
they're supposed to be reviewed every quarter, so every 3 months, but I didn't hear anything for 8 months. And it was very ad hoc. But when I did hear, like I didn't hear consistently every 3 months. They're supposed to let you know when the meeting's coming up, so you have an opportunity to submit what they call mitigation, which I never quite understood what that was supposed to be either.
Well,
Um,
there's a thing, isn't there? I mean, I've seen it too, where you're supposed to sort of almost apologise for what you've done and say, well, I'm very sorry, I won't do it again.
mm,
And do you think that's something that you should have done?
I didn't do anything wrong, so no, I wasn't going to say sorry.
And you wouldn't, I'm assuming, even know what it was you were saying sorry for.
Not
You
at the
were
beginning.
saying sorry.
No, no, no. So yeah, it was really crazy what I was accused of. I was accused of being deceptive on my nomination form for not mentioning that I oppose self-ID and things like that. But it was put in the context of please mention any significant differences. And because I hadn't mentioned it in 2019, and because I didn't think that self-ID was significant, but this is back in September 22, I didn't think it was significant in terms of a general election platform. Like we generally will campaign on three major things, and I didn't think that was going to be one of them. So I didn't consider it to be significant. But along with that complaint, there was also a complaint that I had been too public about my opposition to some Green Party policy, namely around gender identity ideology. And so it's kind of like they wanted to have two things at the same time. They wanted to say that I had been deceptive about it, but also say that I'd been too public about it. So go figure. Like,
Yeah.
so it just didn't make. It's just really irrational. And so yeah, yeah. What can you say? Sorry.
No, I
Give you
think
the shoulders.
that many of us have felt that it's Kafkaesque to
Yeah,
be caught up in the system of the Green Party disciplinary maze. It feels like it's nonsensical, Kafkaesque.
and
So,
terribly biased, like just horribly biased. Like it's clearly that the Green Party Regional Council decide what they like and don't like, and use no fault suspensions willy nilly. You
yeah, yeah,
to censure people to try and prevent people from speaking out about what they don't like. So that's
sure. And again, just to remind people that the Green Party does have a tradition of allowing its members to disagree. It's not like other parties. We have said historically we do politics differently, and that gender ideology is not part of our core values. It's not part of our central philosophical basis, and that presumably the question that you are being held to account for was originally written to say, are there aspects of the philosophical basis that the main aspect of the party that you might disagree with? But it is beyond belief, really. So you were in no fault suspension prison. Many members that I've spoken to have written to the leadership asking them to do something about this, particularly the way that you have been treated and persecuted has just left a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And we now, time went on. You nearly had a hearing, that's right, but then it did or it didn't, or something nearly happened, and then
the hearing began in March this year. But then one of the complainants said to the chair after about an hour that there was a document missing that he'd submitted to the investigator, and he was wondering where it was. And then the investigator, there was like some toing and froing. Anyway, it turned out the investigator then did admit that they had made a mistake. And so the chair said, okay, this being the case, that's unfair to the complainant, and so we need to adjourn and reconvene it as soon as possible.
would you say your experience was one of exemplary professionalism and it was a leading question. I'm thinking that as a no. Yeah, and I know that there are many.
It was an absolute dog's breakfast. That the investigation report is just outrageous. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
poorly put together, illogical, just very, very hard to respond to. It was quite, yeah, very poor quality.
And I think for many of us in the party, knowing how strongly we feel about issues of social justice, it feels like a betrayal to all of us. We would hope that our systems lived up to the principles that we are campaigning for in the outside world, right? And it feels like it's become the absolute opposite of that.
I feel really embarrassed. I feel really embarrassed for the Green Party and talking about this, like it's a horribly disloyal thing to do. But until we have to speak out about the truth and what's happening to bring about change. And so here we are.
And so many of us have written whistleblowing complaints, have tried to speak to the leadership, have tried to resolve it behind closed doors, and that has had no effect. It's fallen on deaf ears, as we know, as campaigning within other other situations. Signing a petition doesn't work. Writing a letter doesn't always work. You have to sort of stand up for what you believe in, which is absolutely what you're doing. So you're part of this targeted and abusive campaign, and then the general election was called. And you were still in no fault suspension prison.
That's right, yeah. And so because it's no fault, then it does say in the Constitution that a person on no fault can't be deprived of any of their roles. So hence, they really shouldn't have been able to remove me, and that's where the big problem in particular. The thing that led me to resign was just so patently discriminatory and so deeply unfair, and the injustice was just too great. So yeah, hence my hearing was due to happen the evening before the last day that I could submit papers to nomination papers.
Wow. Incredible.
And by
I'm
then,
sure that was a coincidence, she says sarcastically.
and I just kind of thought I've had people asking me for quite a while now, would I stand as an independent? Because I won't stand unless people ask me, and I did. I did have many people asking me to stand, so I just thought, that's it. I'm not going. So I didn't go. And I spent the evening, I went around to friends' homes getting their signatures that I needed for the nomination form. I thought that was a more productive use of my time. And
Did it feel in some way therapeutic?
oh, it was
To have
pretty.
landed in that place where you are now empowered, because it can be a very disempowering situation when you're in this limbo. You don't know whether you're a member or not, because somebody's called it Schrodinger's suspension or something like that, where you're simultaneously a member and not a member. Or are you bound by the rules? Are you not? So you're liberated. You've taken action. You've liberated yourself.
Yes, and no, it felt great. It felt really great to be liberated and free to free to be honest. Well, not that I was ever dishonest, but free to be open
Yeah.
about what's happening, and yeah, just to say, well, you tried to shut me up, but hey, here I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, bravo to that. Absolutely. And it sounds like you've been well received. You say that you've got people that were
Mm.
that asked you to stand, but have you got many people supporting you now? Have you got a team behind you? How's that going?
Yes. So that was on the Friday, and Amber, who I mentioned earlier, she is my campaign manager. She was very, very keen for me to stand. She left the Green Party quite a while ago, for various reasons, but yeah. So she did a ring around and what have you, and people started contacting me when we publicised it. And yeah, over that weekend we had a team of more than 30 people who said they wanted to volunteer and help with the campaign.
Right.
Um,
Wow, fantastic.
so that was wonderful. And then we put a crowdfunder together. I think it went live on the Monday last week, and already it's got something like £5,200. Like,
That's
and
brilliant. What a brilliant response.
yeah, that's right. We put a leaflet together very hastily. We got it printed. It's out. It's mostly delivered now across the constituency. So I'm just so impressed by,
That is no small feat. Getting a leaflet out across the whole constituency is that's
yeah,
a
it's
lot.
just really really thrilling. People are doing things on social media. Obviously, we've got some banners made. We've had several stalls already. Going to have lots more. So yeah, it's yeah, very.
And I mean, I was reading some of the comments on your crowdfunder. You've obviously got really lovely support and people saying really, really beautiful things about you. And some of them also saying that they left the party because of the way that this whole episode, ugly, ugly episode has unfolded. I can see that Emma has just shared your crowdfunder, and then we will share it again later on and a couple more links, but it's there for people if they want to use it. But do stay with us for now. So, Alison, tell us then a little bit about this campaign. You're not just standing to be sort of a little bit vengeful towards the party. You know, you're always a true Green, and you've always believed in Green values. But tell us a little bit more about the platform that you're standing on, and what you foresee what's your vision for Sheffield?
So I'm sort of Green Party, yes, a lot of that, most of that are the values. Plus, you won't be surprised to hear a particular platform regarding free speech and a particular platform regarding women and girls. So they're the things that the Green Party no longer stand for, and therefore, that's the gap that I can fill. That's my position.
Yeah.
Positive responses. I did a post about it on Twitter a few days ago, and it got 2,000 and odd likes, which is a lot for me. I know that's not a lot for people like Darren, but yeah, it's a lot for people like me. So that was just like really exciting to know that a lot of people are feeling that way, and I've received loads of emails from people saying, "I'm going to vote for you specifically because of this."
Yeah.
Because we're really concerned about what's happening, and no one seems to be speaking about it. Openly supporting the CAS report. People are really, really pleased to hear about that. Because a lot of people are worried, and I just think that there's been a massive miscalculation by a lot of the mainstream parties. I don't think that they've really understood what the public mood is. They've listened to lobby groups and not really paid attention to how most people feel about really strongly about the ideas that are being pushed onto children, and don't want to see that happening. So yeah, they're my distinctive features that the Green Party doesn't provide.
Sure. And with regard to sort of environmental issues and the approach that you're taking, do you think that do you think there is a place for new Green politics? I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to start a new party this evening, but do you think there's a space for new Green politics?
Oh, well, this is the thing, isn't it? I think it is politics, is electoral politics going to be the way that we actually deal with the climate and nature crisis? Would be my question back to you, and I'm not entirely convinced about that. And and one of the things that I learned early on is that we didn't get the vote by voting. And so I think if the change that we require is so vast, that we talk about system change, not climate change, but changing the system, my word, that's not something that's going to come out of Westminster. So the Houses of Parliament are extremely important in terms of providing a platform and a voice, and so it's a really good way of getting exposure to important ideas and encouraging people to be outspoken about their concerns. So it's valid. Like I still think that the electoral process is important, but what we've lost in the Green Party is the campaigning element that we used to have, that was really strong when I first joined, and has dissipated rapidly.
So do you think? And that was my question, really, but you've kind of honed it. Do you think that the party? Of course, I'm expelled, so I shouldn't really say we. But do you think that the Green Party has kind of lost its way in that regard, kind of become subsumed by the very machine that it wanted to initially resist, because it's become so intent on winning seats rather than effecting change?
Yeah, no, you described that beautifully. I just think, yeah, it's become a mainstream party. It's acting like a mainstream party. I feel like we've lost our USP, which was like the real campaigning elements that we used to have. We talked about, all the actions that we do, in terms of non-direct
Non-violent direct action.
Thank you.
So you're doing brilliantly, and we've done a lot of talking, Alison.
Yeah, got the muddle there.
Yeah, it's cool.
NVDA.
Yeah.
The importance of that. And as you say, like a few years back, Caroline got arrested, I got arrested, like we were seen as being part of grassroots movements. That was a really important thing. And now I'm not convinced, I don't know that that's happening. And so, a lot of people now, they put a lot more energy into groups like XR and Just Stop Oil, which is fantastic. And they just continue their membership of the Green Party, but the Green Party no longer provides them an avenue for activism that used to be a real thing. And so I just feel like there's been a big mistake. It's been a big mistake to just become focused on electoralism. It's very uninspiring. It's terribly boring. It's like very boring to just be looking at trying to get councillors elected and, focusing on 4 target constituencies. And, I've seen one of the Sheffield Green Party emails that's come out recently, and it's basically saying, go to those 4, travel hundreds of miles, campaign for someone that you've never met, rather than, be active in your own constituency. Like,
it feels really hollow, doesn't it? It does feel really hollow.
A grassroots, community driven. We're meant to be about devolution, and yet we're doing this. And I just despair. I'd like to turn the clock back and stop that happening, because I think it's a huge mistake.
Well, listen, I'm going to give you a moment to take a breather and have a look at some of these lovely comments that I'm getting in the chat. Somebody's saying that I want this woman to be in Parliament. So even though we've just said that, at the same time, I really understand, how you're resonating so well with our audience this evening. They're saying things like, your clarity, your honesty, your sincerity and your commitment are desperately needed in government. And of course, they absolutely are. Whilst recognising that they would only go some way, if we saw more people like you, Alison, I do feel that would perhaps enable some of the cultural shift that's really needed. And somebody else has jumped in there and said, and integrity. Absolutely, there's many beautiful words to describe you, and you're just going to have to take it. I know this will be uncomfortable. There are other people who said that, yes, there, as well as the people that have made those lovely comments on the crowdfunder, there are also people that didn't feel that they were able to, because they are members of the party and they would love to support you, but they couldn't. And let's read some more of these comments that came out. Don't give in to bullies. People were saying the weird clique running the Green Party need to go. That seems to be widely held view now. Sending you good wishes, saying things like justice and fairness are at the heart of an equitable society, and that's what the Green Party should be standing for. Supporting the originally democratically selected Green Party candidate for Sheffield Central, Alison Teal. And of course, there is this rule that we talked about right at the start of this meeting, that you can't stand against a properly selected Green Party candidate. And I think that will be really interesting going forward, because you were the properly selected candidate. So nobody that has stepped forward to support you, in my view, has broken that rule. But of course, we know that with the faction that are in control of our disciplinary system at the moment, they will bend the rules way beyond just redefining that. Somebody else has said the rules have gone out of the window. Yes, they absolutely have. So wishing you the best of luck. I left the party because of the way that they treated you. What an astoundingly and astonishingly brave, courageous fighter you are. And I think that is something that goes through the thread of everything we've spoken about this evening, Alison. You've come back so strongly from the disgusting treatment you've endured from your own party. Shame on them, but solidarity, and very best of luck to you. What beautiful things. How great, how satisfying, how rewarding for you to know that you are inspiring these kind of positive feelings in others. And I really believe in that kind of catalyst effect. There are so many things that will be happening because of you and other individuals like you who take those strong stances, and then you inspire others to do the same. And I'm sure there will be other people, other women that you are aware of throughout history, or that you've encountered, that inspired you to take those sort of actions in the first place. And that's how we create that ripple effect. I'd love to open up the chat if anybody has got any questions. Whilst we are waiting, I just wanted to sort of bring this up because on the 30th of May, Caroline Lucas spoke to Novara Media about Labour's treatment of Diane Abbott and Fazia Shaheen, saying it points to an authoritarianism that's deeply worrying, not just for Labour Party members, but in terms of what kind of Labour government we will actually get. I found that deeply uncomfortable when I saw it. I just wondered if you wanted to comment on that at all. There's been some laughter emojis as well, again, because what else can we do but laugh in the face of that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it's really, I think Caroline's wonderful. And so, and I can understand, I mean, she's a politician. She's not going to draw attention to the problems in her own party, but of course it is astonishingly hypocritical. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do know that people have made her aware. I'm just going to have a look now at Sue. Somebody's just, this is not a question by somebody called Sue, but somebody's passed this to me. And this person has said, I'd like to know who the complainant was who said a document was missing at the initial hearing. And I don't expect you to answer this, Alison, but I think they make an interesting point. Why should accusers hide behind anonymity while they're busy causing mayhem and showing the party in a very negative light? It seems that this is a vindictive complaint and there's a greater level of incompetence on the party that it allows this to, to continue.
I like to believe this person was really pressured to do it because he's a former colleague and we got along great.
Right.
So to receive the complaint, and he actually asked for my expulsion. He didn't ask for a no-fault suspension. He asked for an expulsion. And that was just like devastating because I really, really like him. And, we had a really good working relationship and it's really just like awful. And that's been the really awful part is, to be ostracized by people that I really respected. And I don't think that the party gives any consideration at all to this. And you know this very well, Zoe, your own experience, to just be discarded and excluded is, psychologically that takes an awful toll. And, I really lost a lot of confidence during this time. It's just awful. And when you first go out after being suspended, out and about, and I just sort of felt like people were looking at me and, could maybe see that there was something wrong with me or assume there's no smoke without fire, and think the worst of me. And it was just really, really horrible. And it would be kind of good to maybe have some restorative justice type activity, I think, but Green Party Regional Council really need to know what they're doing to people, how the emotional toll that this behaviour of theirs is taking. And I assume, given that they've got such a cavalier attitude towards it, that, they must be completely unaware of what they're doing to people.
Sure. I do believe that some of them may be motivated by a deep-seated sort of vindictive thread, but I also suspect that many people believe that they are acting from a place of good, even if it's absolutely not what I would agree with, and they haven't taken a moment to reflect. I think, gosh, what would you do if you had been involved in this and then you kind of took a moment to reflect and really understand the pain and the suffering that has been caused to so many party members, and not just those that have been put on sanction as well. The faith in the party has been destroyed for so many people that have stood close by to you, stood close by to me, and the party was something that we really believed in. We believed that we found our kind of philosophical, political home. So
absolutely. And will we ever get an apology? I want us both and all the others. Yeah, really, we do deserve an apology.
Yeah, and it also brings me into, it's not just the members of GPRC, and I'll just define that, it's the Green Party Regional Council. So for those who are not members of the party, there are different regions. They're linked to when we used to have MEPs, and each region elects 2 members and they become part of a national body, and they are supposed to be in charge of the well-being of the party. That's part of their remit, and instead they're now sort of taking on and awarding themselves rogue powers, that's my words, rogue powers that allow them to impose these sanctions. And And the way that the constitution is structured, it was structured in a time of goodwill when the party was very small, and there is no kind of accountability. So there's no way for these members, it seems, to be recalled. We hope that that will change. We hope that there will. And I'm going to go to a few more questions now. So I've just got somebody who's asking, am I going to ask the questions? Yes, I am getting on to the questions right now. So Alison, how important is evidence and science to you? Do you think they are essential to the application of all issues alongside appropriate progressive values such as the pursuit of human equality? I'm going to read that again. It's a pretty dense question. How important is evidence and science to you? Do you think they are essential to the application of all issues alongside appropriate progressive values such as the pursuit of human equality?
So yes, of course. Empirical research is absolutely vital for us to have an understanding of things and to build on the knowledge that we've got. And so without that, where are we? And this is the great, the glaring problem with this idea of lived experience, that somehow it trumps empirical science, which of course it can't be allowed to, because then we're all at sea. We need to be able to rely on evidence-based information in order to make good decisions.
Yeah. Somebody has asked about the people who are those kind of people in the middle who weren't necessarily campaigning against you. They weren't necessarily the people who were completely embedded in having a strong relationship with you or having gender critical views or standing up for material realism, but they were in the middle. But because of the time that's gone on with your particular case and the fact that there's been so much knowledge now about it, and there were a lot of people, I think, that didn't sort of step up or say anything. And how do you feel about that? And also, what stops people? And this is a question that I'd like to know the answer to as well. But what do you think stops people from getting involved and saying this is not okay, this is wrong?
Because you need a critical mass, don't you? You need enough people to do that, to stop the persecution and everyone. And I totally understand. I don't judge anybody for not coming forward, because you can lose jobs over this, as we've seen. Really serious repercussions can occur for people speaking out. There's been so many legal cases now, hasn't there? And they've pretty much all been successful. The discrimination's been shown to have been illegal, and yet, so all those people in the party that are perhaps sympathetic or unsure, I think that they could see what had happened to me, and they didn't want it to happen to them. And I think it's that simple, probably. It's fear, and I think an awful lot of people are afraid, and you can understand why. But the frustrating part is, if you can get that critical mass, if enough people can speak out, then the persecution ends, and then maybe you do have a discussion that we so badly need.
Yeah. So in response to that, you can sign the Green Women's Declaration anonymously. And they were part of the reason for that initial petition was to give a demonstration to the party that their narrative, that it was just one or two rogue people, could no longer be perpetuated. That we could show that there was a solid number of people within the party who didn't agree with the trans women are women, trans men are men policies or statements. It's not really, even to my mind, a policy, but it's a statement, and that there are different perspectives within the party and that those should be allowed. And I would also suggest that, you can join our mailing list, and that is also completely anonymous. And that's a really good way of finding out a little bit more about what's going on in the party and how you can take action as individual members, even if you're not able to put your head above the parapet yet. And, we would love you to join us and get more involved, but we also understand, as you've said, Alison, why that can be really difficult for some people. We've got other people in the chat saying they're actually going to leave the party as a result of hearing what's happening this evening, and I understand that, and everybody has to make their own decisions. But we also try to say, please don't, if you can manage to stay, because, I certainly still believe in the possibility of turning this ship around, but it is quite a huge tanker and it's going to take a long time. Darren's actually asked, how hopeful, Alison, are you that things in the Green Party can change? He says that his faith had hit absolute rock bottom in recent weeks, and no surprises as to why that happened. We know that he was also suspended after making a comment about the Cass report. But he's been heartened by Adrian Ramsey speaking up for the Cass report this week and acknowledging the need for single-sex spaces. That was on BBC 5 Live. I don't know if you caught that, but you might be aware of it even if you haven't listened to it in detail. Does that give you hope as well?
Certainly, it is encouraging. And I know, Jenny Jones has a good understanding of these things too, and she's been public about it. She's stuck her head above the parapet. But it needs to be more, doesn't it? And I really hope it would. Yeah, if Adrian is successful and becomes an MP, then that will be really strengthen our case and really give me hope that the party can change. But yeah, we'll have to see what the fallout is. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up suspended after the election campaign for what he said if he isn't an MP.
My goodness, that would be something. And it wouldn't. I don't think anything would surprise me now. I think it's much less likely to happen if he gets elected. And there's an article in The Guardian, I think, that was just saying that there's a really strong, he's looking really strong in the polls, he and Ellie Chance as well. So what do you feel about that? And also, when you answer that, what do you feel about that in relation, I don't think we've quite touched on this, to the fact that Sheffield Central was given the opportunity to be a target seat. So this is not just any old seat up and down the country. This was when after 2019, it was the third best performing constituency in the country when it comes to green placements, if that's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely should be a target seat. And it's still predicted to, even though there's been barely a campaign, it's still predicted to be the third highest Green vote in the country. Higher than the others, but we'll just have to wait and see. But what happened was, when I was selected as a candidate, I was told that a member of the executive contacted the National Party and said, we don't want to be a target, we don't want a target constituency, because we're so unhappy about our candidate. It's going to damage the Green Party's reputation to have a TERF be the candidate, and therefore we don't want it. And then I heard subsequently that the National Party's response was to say that Sheffield was dysfunctional and a basket case and couldn't be trusted to be a target constituency.
Well, it's difficult to disagree with that analysis. But of course, that was just one person, and awful. Must be heartbreaking for you and all of the other Green activists who've worked so hard to build the party up. Hot on the tails of the Conservatives, is that right? It's a Labour constituency, but you were hot on the tails of Conservatives and really liked it.
It's a really, it had so much potential, but this incredible dogmatism of the gender identity people, they preferred to give away the opportunity of gaining an MP over, the risk of having someone who's got, more balanced views about how we might deal with sex and gender. I think everybody can draw their own conclusions about where these activists' priorities lie, but it certainly doesn't seem to be with the party. And even more importantly than that, it doesn't seem to be with the climate crisis and the depletion, the crisis that we're facing within nature as well, which is, really what we're all here for, what we should all be putting sort of front and central. Of course, all of the other policies that we have in the Green Party are different ways of addressing how to mitigate for the climate crisis that we're facing. Somebody else has said it is important to have people free to expose the corruption of the party from outside, as well as members inside working to restore the party. Yes, that is true. So if you do step away from the party and then you feel more free to speak, then again, please get in touch with us. There's another email address that we've got, which is evidence@greenwomensdeclaration.co.uk, and we're collecting sort of statements from people who've
left the party, and to say why, because we're also trying to let members of the central organisation who are paying attention to this crisis, this party crisis, we're trying to let them know that this isn't real, and this is not just, you, me and a couple of other people that are kind of in disagreement with the party. There's so many people that are aligned with us. Another question for you. Alison, what gives you such resilience in the face of such prejudice and ill treatment?
That I was, very strong sense of fairness and injustice since I can remember when, and so I just won't tolerate bullies. It's just not acceptable, and someone has to stand up to them.
Do you feel almost like it's a compulsion, or that you just have to do? You don't. It doesn't even be a question. Is this the right thing to do, or will I win? Or it's just you got to do it.
Yeah, it just has to. Someone has to do it, and as we've discussed, oftentimes a lot of people just aren't willing to. But I can't not.
Yeah. You think so? Regardless of the mental health impacts, and I'm sure physical health impacts that it has had on many other women that I've spoken to, you feel perhaps that it would be even worse if you weren't able to do something.
Yeah. I just couldn't look myself in the mirror. You have to do the right thing, and that's what motivates me.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for doing the right thing. There's a couple more questions. First of all, how do you think the Green Party disciplinary system could be improved, if you think it could? And do you think it's only the disciplinary system that needs to be changed?
No. So the structure of the party is such that when I first joined, I thought, ooh, one member, one vote, that's marvellous, that's ultra democratic. But no, it's not. And because what it allows for a select number of people, mostly young people, single people, to attend conference, and they get to decide all the policy because they're the only ones that can easily get there. And so we've ended up with lots of skewed policies that the whole of the party, had they had an opportunity to discuss them, probably wouldn't have arrived at. And so I'm much more keen that we develop a delegate structure now. So it would be like, because we're meant to be a grassroots party, local parties ought to discuss issues that they think are important, start to work on policy, then vote on whether or not they want to take that to regional level. Then the same process happens at regional level, and then it would get to national, and then you would have delegates there to go and vote on it on behalf of local parties. And I think that would be a far more democratic structure than the one we have right now. And I think that would have an impact on other things like the disciplinary process as well, because there would be more scrutiny, wouldn't there? There'd be more people involved. One of the things about the Green Party is that there's a tremendously large passive membership, I think. And maybe it's because the local meetings oftentimes, they're maybe not as focused on grassroots campaigns and things as they might be as we become more of an electoral machine. They're more about how do we, come and listen to the councillors and hear what they're doing, rather than come and let's decide what we're going to work on this year, let's create a campaign about XYZ. And, I just feel like we're not doing the best thing we could. I'm still saying we, in terms of improving engagement and actually getting things happening. And that's because we've shifted from the campaigning to this elections are all. And so, I think there's quite a number of things that I would change if I had a...
So somebody's just put in the chat to sort of, what do you think about online voting for all members? So at the moment, in order to create policy as well, you have to pay a significant sum. I know it was going to conference was out of the question for me when I was a mum with young children. I couldn't couldn't take up the time. It felt like a luxury. And of course, it's quite a hefty amount, not just to pay to go to a conference, but you've got to pay the travel, the accommodation, and so on and so forth. So it's quite exclusionary in that sense. What do you think about this idea of having voting for all members?
Well, I think that would be far better than what we have right now. But before we do that, we really do need to improve engagement. People have to, because we could end up, because the membership is currently pretty passive, I think that we could end up with still not a very high turnout, policy being decided by just a small percentage of the party. So I do think we need to address the issue of getting members involved as a prerequisite to that.
Yeah, and somebody else is here sort of talking about the idea of, really making it easier for new members to understand the core workings of the party. It is an absolute maze. We've kind of got ourselves tied in knots with levels of complexity, and so much that needs to be reviewed, or even just ripped up and thrown out and start again might be better than reviewing. You actually were in co-chair, weren't you, of one of the groups that was really trying to get to grips with it, was the rights and responsibilities.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I wasn't there for long though, sadly, but yeah, a few months. And
well, they didn't want you to actually, be able to have any opinion or influence anything. Goodness me.
It was a real shame, because I was, the other co-chair was someone who's working very much in the space that I was considered to be opposed to, but we got on great. And
Right.
I think that we could have actually made a difference together. He was really respectful of my views. I was respectful of his. But I think that the gender identity faction really don't want that. They don't want us to be collaborative. They just want to purge us.
Yeah. I mean, there's just too much evidence to think that it's anything else now, isn't it? Well, Alison, after everything that's happened to you, would you ever consider rejoining the party? And if yes, under what conditions or circumstances? Perhaps some of what we've just spoken about, but perhaps there's other conditions now. If you had the magic wand, what would you do? And what would be the conditions for you rejoining?
I'd want an apology. I'd want to have the bad actors who have breached the code of conduct so many times to be expelled. I'd want, I guess, reassurance in terms of the structure that was actually going to change. I mean, my goodness, it's been to conference so many times, hasn't it, trying to change the structure. So I think I'd hang on and hope that was going to happen, perhaps. But yeah, my faith in the party is, deeply shaken, and it might be that my energies are best used elsewhere.
It's such a loss, just to stay with that for a moment. Such a loss to the party. It's a loss to all of us to have you no longer in the party and no longer campaigning as effectively as you did in the party. But I do really wish you well in your current campaign, and I do hope that it goes from strength to strength, and that out of this, at the very least, something positive emerges, that that comes forward. We can never know, can we? But I'm sure you would agree with me when I say that when we stand in truth and in integrity, you can't necessarily plot what's going to happen next, but beautiful doors start to open up to you when you use your voice and speak out for things. I'm sure you've got experiences of that in life already. Is there anything else on the horizon that you're thinking of, or after this election, and obviously once you're elected to the House of Commons?
Well, we're already talking about, after the campaign, this group of people that have coalesced around this campaign, and what we might do, and very embryonic stages, but we are interested in getting more involved in the movement for climate and nature in Sheffield, and doing more locally, which is what I really love.
Beautiful, absolutely. And it must just be a relief to be out of this crazy situation. Okay, well, somebody else has asked, what can we do to help during the election campaign? And I know that somebody in the group is going to share the details of your campaign. And I just want to mention here that we've got another one of our amazing sisters, a founding signatory of the Green Women's Declaration. It's Dawn Furness. So there are actually two candidates who are standing now, ex-Greens are standing as independent candidates. Just to tell you a little bit about Dawn, she was originally expelled from the party after she raised safeguarding issues following the David Challoner case. So the expulsion that she first received then was changed to a suspension after she launched a legal case against the party, which is still ongoing. But she's actually been barred from standing from office. Effectively, her hands have been tied as a campaigner and a political activist, much like you, Alison. So this is even though she has been a powerful force in her local party, again, much like you. She's been a regular parliamentary candidate going back as far as 2017, and she was also a candidate as an MEP. So she's now standing in the constituency of Cramlington and Killingworth in Northumberland. Glad I managed to say that right. And she's standing on a platform of women's rights, safeguarding, and the new Green Deal. I think somebody is sharing the details of Dawn's campaign and her crowdfunder as well. Dawn's also focusing on the impact on humanity of climate change and of nuclear weapons, and she's also got particular concerns around the reach of AI. So as I say, both the links to both those crowdfunders are in the chat. If you are able to, in a position to donate to them, and I know not everybody is, but if you are able to, then it would be wonderful if you're able to pop something in the pot. Also get in touch with Alison if you can. And if you want to get in touch with Dawn because you're local to her, please just use our email address. That's info@greenwomensdeclaration.co.uk, and we'll pass that information on to Dawn, who is a great colleague of ours. I just want to sort of go through then. People are asking, what else can they do? People feeling really incensed. There's a number of other things you could do. You could stand for a governance position within the party. That would be great. We need more people who are really willing to step up, and that will, I think one of the things that may start to affect change, and I think it is happening already. I'm seeing some great people that have stepped forward to be on GPEC, some great people that have stepped forward to be on the regional council, but it needs a majority. They don't have to be gender critical, just have to put party and governance issues ahead of factionalism and ideology. So again, if you're interested in doing that, get in touch with us via our email. I've also already talked to you about submitting evidence, the Green Women's Declaration. Please, if you haven't already, please do sign the declaration. Ask friends, ask family to sign the declaration. Join our mailing list. Give us a follow on social media. I'm sure people will pop some of that information in the chat very soon. So the next Green Women's Declaration webinar is going to be on Wednesday, the 3rd of July. So 7 o'clock through to 8:15. And we've got a very special guest speaker that evening. It's Mia Hughes, and she's going to be in conversation with Jessica Goldsmith and Emma Bateman. They will be talking about the breaking of the WPATH files, the rise of WPATH and the absorption of gender ideology by institutions. This creep that has gone insidiously through all of our institutions is really unsettling. And of course, the effect on children of the social contagion that all of us have been partly touched on this evening. They'll be delving more deeply into that. So we're going to send out the link on Twitter on the Green Women's Declaration email. So you better make sure that you are signed up to that email so that you can keep abreast of our next webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Alison, have you enjoyed talking to us?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's been lovely.
It's been a real pleasure to talk to you too. I'd like to thank everybody else who's been brilliantly behind the scenes, contributing to the organisation and keeping us going, doing graphics for social media and just making sure that the show stays on the road. We've got a nice little message here from one of our, whose trees are trees? Awesome. There's lots of people sending their love to Alison and wishing you all the best. Do keep in touch. We will make sure that we keep everybody on the mailing list informed about your campaign, and we look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.